Greetings, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Titan Law. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today, I'm in conversation with two democracy and human rights activists, Namatai Kwekweza and Vongai Zimudzi. Enjoy this thought provoking conversation. Right. Namatai Kwekweza and Vongai Zimudzi. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor. I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me. And it's really a pleasure and an honor being invited here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ngue. I'm happy to be meeting both of you today.
Excellent. You the youngest people to feature on In Conversation with Trevor. So we are actually making a little bit of history today, featuring two young Zimbabweans who are passionate about democracy and who are passionate about human rights. So I'm so very happy to have you on the show. Let's start right at the beginning, which is you ladies have been making headlines by the protest that you carried out against the constitutional amendment number 2. Can you explain to me what made you embark on this protest? If I could start with you, Vongai.
Okay. So it actually happened in a funny way. The way that we managed to pull that off, me and Namatai. We're just having a conversation in a WhatsApp group that we're both in. And when we were talking to other young people, asking them if they were consulted on the public hearings in their particular provinces, only a couple of them said that they were consulted. So already there was a problem with that, in the sense that most young people were not consulted in the process. So there was then the Friday of the act. That was when we were having the consultations for Harare province. And there was a change of events where we were supposed to meet at the Rainbow Towers, but then we were shortchanged to a Zoom meeting. I personally attended that Zoom meeting, but it was faced with a lot of problems. The technical team, it took so long. There were less than 100 people in there. So already it violated even parts of the constitution, which speaks on the procedure of actually having a bill in terms of public consultations. So after that meeting, we were just talking, me and Namatai, and we were just like, what? I think let's just go to meet the minister. And we wrote our letter where we were asking for dialogue with him. And then we went to the ministry's office, and then we were denied audience. And then we went downstairs. Namatai came up with this crazy idea, which I then also supported and was eager in also doing the same. And that's how I can say it happened for my part.
Namatai, anything to add in terms of this crazy idea that Vongai is talking about?
I'm quite intrigued that she called the idea crazy, but I think that it was necessary in the given context of the circumstances to which we found ourselves in. Yeah, because naturally the minister was not going to give us audience. In any case, we had a written request to meet him urgently, because that Friday, the 19th of June, was the last day of the public hearings or the consultations. And we were very unimpressed as to how these consultations were happening. So just to add on to what Vongai is saying, in the 2013 constitution, when it was being crafted, 3.3 million Zimbabweans were consulted. And 4% of those participants, of the 3.3 million, voted yes in a referendum so that the constitution could actually be there. So if you look at how these public hearings were held, I think maybe the first thing that we want to criticize is the aspect of how in the different provinces they only had one venue, which was in most instances not even central. You know that it's a lockdown. A lot of people do not have access, to transport. They can't move freely, or they'll be stopped at the rawest issue. And the second issue was this whole thing where venues are changed. We were supposed to do this physically, and now it's online. And they changed that venue, and they announced it about like 2 days before the date where we're supposed to meet in person. And they say now, well, we're having the hearings on Zoom. So when we realized that, oh, they have changed the venue and they're now putting it on Zoom, a lot of young people don't even know what Zoom is. Data is very expensive. So we knew that the number of participants naturally dwindles. So that in itself was something that made the both of us angry. So I just told Vongai, you know what, we have to do whatever is necessary for us to get the attention of the minister, so that he knows that this is what is happening and that we are very unimpressed about how such an important process is being butchered. And it's being done because of constitutional inclusion, but it's being done in a way that's exclusionary on account of, who has data, who does not, who has access to Zoom, who does not, who has access to a venue and who does not, which in itself is very unconstitutional. So when we realized that, oh, we are not going to be getting audience from the Minister of Legal Justice and Parliamentary Affairs, we then just decided to go out and actually wait for him outside the new government complex, so that if we saw him getting in or out, we would make our concerns apparent to him, which would have been an easy way of doing things. And we had not anticipated at all a situation where we would be arrested. Actually, I just thought maybe an angry guard would just come out to dismiss us. But that day ended up in a very, unfortunate way for us, because we wound up at Harare Central by the end of the day. So this is actually what happened in the context of how we ended up, being arrested for the constitutional amendment campaign.
And did you have to spend the night in detention, Vongai?
Yes, unfortunately we did, and it's not something that even now I'm proud of. It's not something that I'm proud of, because how can we have a system, a judicial system, where we are punished because we want audience with the minister? Mind you, His Excellency the President of Zimbabwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, is always talking about him having an open door policy, even his administration. So for me, it's not something that I'm proud of, that our country sees it fit to arrest us just because we wanted to engage in a dialogue with the minister, and that we also wanted to tell them about how we felt in terms of the manner in which the public consultations were held.
And so now, are you both out on bail? Namatai, are you both out on bail?
Yes, we are both out on bail. And we are just grateful that the state did not oppose bail. We had to pay, in the situation, yes, as bail money. We had our passports confiscated, they were taken away. We were told to reside at the same address until the matter is resolved. And we were also told to report to Harare Central Police Station every Friday as part of the bail conditions. And we were also told that we would be appearing in court on the 20th of July, of which we went, and it was just a very, hectic day. Keep our papers, so we ended up not going on trial. So they have actually pushed our trial date to sometime in September. Is that correct, Vongai? Yes, on the 14th of August. So that's for the time I was arrested with Vongai. And in my case, unfortunately, I ended up being arrested a second time. And this time around, again, I was granted bail at 1,500. I was with two other gentlemen, Young Aston Matete and Prince Gora. Again, I'm being made to report at Bordeaux Police Station. and also reside at the same address. So these were some of the conditions that we got. But I will, however, just express that on the bail conditions that I got when I was arrested with Vongai were kind of stiff. They were very stiff. We later on realized it, and we have engaged our lawyers about it because they were very stiff. In the context that we paid 3,000 RTGS. For similar offenses, other people pay about 1,000 or 500. We had our passports taken away, which was something that was something that we did not anticipate. And also we are having to report at Harare Central once every Friday, which is not our nearest police station. So they want us reporting at the headquarters for the police. So yeah, we are out on bail, and we are trying by all means necessary to comply with all of our bail conditions.
And tell me, what crime are you being charged for? What crime have you committed?
Okay, so they're saying that it's Section 37 of the Criminal Code, which speaks to engaging in a public gathering with the intent to promote public violence, breach of peace, and bigotry, which in essence shocks us because, first of all, how can two people be in a gathering? And also, we did not have anything, that hinted to us trying to promote any kind of violence. We were not armed. We did not in any way disrespect anybody. We were just sitting outside.
So tell me now, in terms of this constitutional amendment number 2, are there things in there? Because I realize that it's a very important amendment that the public is being asked to consider, and then indeed the Parliament is being asked to consider. It relates, some of the things that it touches on is the nomination of vice presidents as running mates, the increase of ministers and deputy ministers appointed outside Parliament from 5 to 7, the appointment of judges, that process involved in the appointment of judges, the appointment and the role of the public protector, and the appointment of a prosecutor general. I mean, these are just a few of the issues that the amendment seeks to attend to. Are there issues in there that were very important for you that caused you to carry out this protest?
Okay, so for me, I first had an encounter with the bill beginning of the year. And something that I noticed that the bill was aimed at 5 things, ultimately. And that was to enhance the power of the executive, to consolidate dictatorship, and to weaken parliament oversight, and also to negatively impact the independence of the judiciary. Lastly, it was also aimed at tokenizing women and youth in politics to keep them quiet. So everything about that bill, in one of the forums that I am part of, I actually lobbied that let it be withdrawn entirely so that we can have public consultations, start up public consultations before we take it to Parliament. So that if we now have public consultations, start up public consultations where people are actually aiding in their voice on what it is that they would want to be amended in the Constitution, and vis-a-vis with the amendments, with the proposed amendments that which is going to serve the needs of the general people, not the needs of a certain political party or the needs of a certain politician. Because from my end, this is how it seems, that this is a political amendment, and it's so disappointing, because the Constitution is what determines where a country is going and even the future of the country, to the extent that a political party can suggest 27 clauses, to change 27 clauses, or to introduce 27 new things in a constitution which is less than 10 years old. To me, it didn't make sense. Some of the things that are already in the Constitution, they are not yet aligned. The issues of 50-50, we don't have 50-50 in the presidium. We do not have 50-50 in the workplace. We do not have 50-50 in the social strata. So already, why then rush on to introduce certain things when the things that we are supposed to have implemented when we haven't implemented them? And now speaking as a feminist, especially on the issue to do with the running mate, I think that, it should never be removed, because we're having this situation where the Constitution is saying 50-50. And the Electoral Act is also saying that political parties or politicians should observe 50-50. But then after an election, you then find that a president decides to violate the Constitution on his own by putting in 2 male vice presidents. So already we are not going anywhere. But if we keep the running mate clause on, we know that we are going to be having 50-50. It's going to be a plus on the women's movement, and I'm genuinely excited. Also on the thought of actually having a female president, the chances of having a female president through the running mate. So I mean, the amendment bill on its own, it's a rushed thing. There's so many things that we need to be focusing now much more on, rather than focusing on amending a constitution. Right now, people have no food. Hospitals, they're now becoming a genocide center. Why then rush to amend a constitution as if we do not have other things that we're supposed to prioritize on? It just shows that there's a total disconnect between our leaders and the people whom they actually are supposed to be serving.
So as far as you're concerned, Vongai, you're saying the amendment at the moment, given where we are, is not a priority. Is that what you're saying?
Not only on where we are. It is never a priority, because we cannot start speaking of amendments when we have not aligned the Constitution, when we have not aligned the laws of the land with the Constitution of 2018. We cannot rush by amending something that we have not tried. We cannot rush by amending something which has failed, including the quota system of women. We cannot amend a document which is just going to be tokenistic in nature in terms of the youth struggle. Because, I mean, one of the clauses speaks on judges, where the president wants to extend the life of a judge by an extra year, depending on their medical record. To me, it's an insult to me as a young person, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, so part of these amendments is saying that they're going to be tokenizing young people with 10 seats, but then now also on the other hand, they're now speaking of extending of extending retirement age of judges. Does it mean that we do not have competent young people in the legal fraternity who can actually be judges? Does it mean that? The bill on its own, and also on the issue, even on the issues of ministers, right now we've got 5 who are getting in terms of them coming from outside. But if we're now going to be doing an evaluation on the performance that they're doing, are we happy in terms of the performance in terms of the way that they're performing? Now think of now bringing in 2 extra. Do we have the financial muscle of doing that? Do we have a financial muscle of increasing the cabinet? And what is it even speaking about? It's also now speaking about the caliber of people who are getting into public office. If it means that the president cannot find suitable, capable, and ethical and transformational representatives from parliament, then I think it's now high time for us to start having conversations around qualifications and educational backgrounds of people that are going to be putting in public service.
So you don't think that you raise an important point, Vongai, and that point is, if the president can't get competent ministers from parliamentarians, instead of adding on another 2 that are picked from outside, we ought to be looking at the qualifications of people that run as members of parliament. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, true.
Okay.
True. Because for far too long, we have been having people coming in public office who know nothing of the job, who just come in based on institutional memory, let me say institutional memory, and how good they are in in chanting slogans. But because when it matters the most, they are not there to deliver. They cannot deliver. And for how long are we going to be stuck in that position that we are in? So we now need to be serious. These are people who are responsible for the national budget. These are people who are responsible in crafting national policies, which also affect the business sector. And these are people who literally, some of them, they do not have an appreciation. It's not only in parliament, it's also in council,
so
in our local councils.
But the problem then is that it's the dominant political parties that put forward these councillors who don't have the qualifications, and these members of parliament who don't have the qualifications, and the electorate then votes for these people who end up in parliament and are not good quality members of parliament to be appointed as cabinet ministers. Hence, the need for the president to say, I'm going to have 7 instead of 5. But you're saying, no, let's go back to vetting the people that raise their hands and say they want to be members of parliament for, in both the 2 main political parties. Is that what you're saying?
True, Mr. Ngwe. Unfortunately, also one thing that I realized when I was running for office is the way that people vote, the voting patterns of people. At times, people vote for a party without really voting for an individual, without questioning much on the type of person that they are selecting to be their member of parliament or even to be their councillor. They're just voting for a political party. But then, little do they know that if you vote for a good candidate, let's say in local government, that person is now going to be responsible for your day-to-day lives. Things like water coming out of our taps, things like upgrading Harare, or if in this case it's Harare that we find ourselves in, things like upgrading Harare to be a world-class city. I remember when I was still in school, there was this saying of making Harare a world-class city by 2020 or 2018? I think
2020, yeah.
But now, 2020. But now, when I'm now looking back, I'm thinking, okay, so what happened now? Are we the world-class city? But then there are headlines of councillors who are engaging in corrupt activities. There are headlines of councillors who are forging transcripts. There are headlines of councillors who are engaging in illegal activities. And then what exactly are we expecting? In as much as we might have voted for our favorite political party, but is it really transacting to the lives that we're living? And I think that it is high time that, as Zimbabweans, we now then start interrogating some of these things. And part of the reasons why I say that there should be an entire withdrawal of the amendment bill is that we now need to have conversations around the Electoral Act. If it means that we need to whip politicians or political parties in line for them to give us proper candidates, then let it be so. If it means that we're now putting in place policies that protect us as citizens from politicians, because Mr. Ngwe, 2018, literally everyone was selling a very good manifesto. But now looking at that manifesto, and people would vote, some people voted based on manifestos. But now when they're looking back at what the manifesto was saying and what is actually happening right now, there's a total difference. There's some sort of fraud which happened. So I think since 1980, we've been having politicians coming to us and lying, promising us, heaven on earth. But when they actually now get in office, it's a totally different case. So maybe we can now start having conversations as citizens on saying, okay, so how best are we now going to protect ourselves from politicians? And how best are we going to protect ourselves from, because I feel that elections in Zimbabwe, they've been just reduced to a simple child's play. because what people are saying, it's not what then happens once they get in office. So we need to start having a culture of having truthful politicians. If you say that you're going to be if you say that you're going to be providing water, if you're going to facilitate that water is going to be coming out of our taps 24/7, then we need to see it, because we are voting for you on the belief that you are going to be providing for us. But now when you start slacking, and now when we start hearing of all of these shenanigans and all of these blame games, it's central government. But when we voted for this might happen, we voted for you to deliver, not for you to give us stories, not for you to start telling us about sanctions, about all of that. Because when you're crafting your manifesto, you knew exactly what you're writing about. So it's now also a high time that we start making elections make sense in Zimbabwe.
But I hear what you're saying, but isn't the voters at the end of the day, are they not responsible for putting in parliament those members of parliament who are not qualified and those councillors? How do we change the voters' way of looking at things so that they're much more critical in terms of assessing the candidates that are in front of them? How do we change that? Change them from voting for political parties and scrutinize the CVs and the qualifications of the people that are offering themselves for elections? How are we going to change that?
Straight from my head now, I mean, that's a very big question, but straight from my head now, I can think of, really starting voter education now, rather than starting it maybe possibly a year before. But one thing, Mr. Ngwe, that I've realized is that come election time, there's a wave that happens. There's a wave that, is in the atmosphere. You can be complaining right now about your MP or your councillor, but once it's election season, you somehow find yourself going back and putting that X, because there's this rush that comes. But we cannot continue. Yes, these things that have been happening, Mr. Ngwe, since we started having elections. But it doesn't mean that we have to take blame. We are just victims in all of this. We are victims of politicians who come and lie to us, because when someone comes and promises you something, you can just be tempted to say, what, this is very good, this is something that I want. Even for us as young girls, we sometimes get in relationships with guys who, when they're coming and approaching us, they're telling us those sweet things, and we fall for them. But now when we actually get in a relationship, I mean, it's normal, but we should not continue being victims. Let us put in place policies, because us as citizens, we are more than these politicians. We should now put in place policies that protect us as citizens from these politicians.
Namatai,
same way as they even put policies that protect them from us.
Namatai, we're talking about the actual contents of this constitutional amendment, and as you were listening, Vongai has outlined the things that, to her, she thought that this thing ought to be thrown back or suspended. What were the things to you that offended you the most in terms of this amendment number 2?
I trust you had interesting conversation with Vongai, and I just wanted to say that for me personally, when I was looking at the issue of the constitutional amendments, the first issue that is alarming is that before the proposal of the 27 amendments, before the crafting of the constitutional amendment bill number 2, there was no public consultation. So this bill was forwarded by who knows who from who knows where. So it could have been a bunch of politicians sitting somewhere at a braai drinking alcohol when they just decided, no, we want to amend the constitution. Let's have the constitutional amendment bill. We were just given as a bill. There was no prior consultation. What just came was, oh, there's the bill, but there was no prior consultation. That is the first thing that is alarming. Who initiated this process and with what interest? And for us to be in a position where we understand who exactly was behind all of this, we just have to analyze the proposed amendments and ask ourselves who has the most to benefit from the proposed amendments. And if you look at about 11 or so of them, they are meant to benefit one particular individual who sits in the position of president, and also the executive, and a few other higher offices. But this has absolutely nothing to do with the ordinary citizen and with the everyday person like you and me. So I'll just maybe quickly dive into a few of these. Section 327 speaks about Parliament's powers to veto treaties. If these amendments go through, Parliament's oversight over being able to veto treaties will be taken away from them, which means that the president can enter into any treaty without anyone being able to hold him accountable or without any oversight from Parliament. And this significantly increases the powers of the president. Section 92 of the Constitution, which speaks to the aspects of vice presidents, is being amended. If this goes through, it means that that issue of the running mate that was supposed to come back in 2023 will not be coming back. And that means that the president will continue to actually be appointing, vice presidents. And the problematic aspect when it comes to appointing vice presidents is that if the president is then to die, it means that his political party is the one that will then appoint a person who will then take over his position. And this undermines the electorate. That's the first thing. And, look at countries like Malawi. I'm not even going to mention Western countries. Look at countries like Malawi. The president was voted for by the people. The vice president was voted for by the people. And we know that if the president becomes incapacitated or if the president dies and the vice president takes over, he has the backing of the electorate because he was voted for by the people. So we ought, as a country that is pursuing, to advance itself in terms of democracy, to always be preferring options that allow us to give more power to the electorate as opposed to give more powers, to specific individuals or political parties. Maybe I'll just put in a last one, the issue of judges. If you then have the president appointing judges and there are no public interviews in this context, that is being removed by these amendments. It means that, he's going to appoint whoever he wishes. And that also undermines the judiciary and it takes away the independence of the judiciary. If you look at, again, I'll give Malawi as a case study. The president was removed because a judge said, ruled that the elections, were unconstitutional, there were irregularities. And this can only happen if the judiciary is independent. But if in this context, we now have the president appointing judges, I mean, this is a very clear situation of someone wanting to consolidate their power, to be accountable to nobody, because from the judges, from vetoing treaties, everything to vice presidents, they are, the almighty. They are the one who appoints them, who can remove them whenever they feel like. Again, that undermines the principles of democracy. I strongly believe that in our society, we must strive to always put in place systems that circulate power to the many, as opposed to systems that hold power to the few. And if you clearly analyze these constitutional amendments and the context to which these amendments have been forwarded, you can clearly tell that this is another power spree by a few individuals who have the intention to consolidate power for themselves. I think maybe the final thing that I would just say is very disappointing is the fact that this process is being rushed in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Imagine that. And now cases are just spiraling out of control. This morning we heard that parents' shiri has passed on due to the COVID-19, and they were in Parliament last week. They were even talking about this bill, and you're like, why are you prioritizing this when we're focusing on other issues to do with social welfare? People are dying, not just of COVID-19, but also of hunger. There are no nurses in the hospitals. There are no doctors. Why have public consultation process during COVID-19? When you know that you're going to restrict each consultation meeting to only 50 people. Why have all of that? What's the rush? Why don't we focus on the things that actually matter in our context right now? So these were some of the issues that I personally had, and I think that we found synergy with Vongai because she also had some of those issues in the context of how this process had been initiated, how this process was being done, and also the actual contents of the constitutional amendment bill. I think in a nutshell, those were some of the problems that I actually had with the bill.
So where is the process now, Namatai? Is it suspended? I mean, Parliament has been, shut down or suspended because of the COVID thing. Does it mean the process of consultation for the amendment number 2 is also suspended?